Okay, I'm just gonna assume that you guys liked the last video on existential nihilism and SpongeBob, and I misread the title. I thought it was how SpongeBob influenced existential nihilism, but after watching the video too, I was like, this is a weird influence, though it's just explaining it. And it was literally just how they addressed existential nihilism in a SpongeBob episode, which makes a lot more sense. But now today we're here for SpongeBob's darkest episode. There's a lot. If I had to pick a darkest episode, I would pick the Glove World episode. The one where because it's literally the darkest episode, get it? That's what I would assume would be the darkest episode from SpongeBob, but let's see what actually is, right? Play.
This video is brought to you by Squarespace. When it comes to websites, online stores, etc., there's no place to build a beautiful online presence like Squarespace. After 3 videos and probably a bunch of mentions, I can safely say SpongeBob has not only been a big part of this channel, but my life as well. I think it's a really creative show and it never missed the mark, but there's one episode in particular that I think about maybe once a week. That episode is Squidville. Now, when I caught Squidville at a young age, my reaction was always, Squidward's sad, and that still holds till this day. I think Squidville, in a very creative way, is addressing not only depression, but existentialism as well. Let's run through it. The episode starts with SpongeBob and Patrick playing with reef blowers. What starts as a fun way to pass time quickly turns into something more than that, something that annoys Squidward. They take the lines out of SpongeBob's house, the nose, mouth, and eventually eyes out of Squidward's. They turned what used to be a face, a personality, a soul, into nothing more than a rock, trapping Squid in this place of nothingness. After digging himself out from underground, he confronts SpongeBob and Patrick, criticizing them for using the reef blowers and basically wishing he didn't have to live with them in this attitude. Of course, shortly after, a TV comes out of the sky and grants Squidward an opportunity to escape to a land called Squidville, where he is surrounded by only those of his kind. Unsurprisingly, he decides to take the trip. After passing a pretty simple test on his physical appearance, he's welcomed with the same negative energy he's had his whole life by another civilian, and as a result, he feels amazing. Now, the following montage is where things get interesting. Squidward goes about some of his favorite activities like biking, buying canned bread,
which is exactly what he always wanted to do.
In simpler terms, it's Squidward in his ideal society. There isn't room for error. But as this life continues, Squidward finds himself numb to these pleasures. After doing them every day, they start to mean less to him. Eventually, he grows depressed, and I think this is where the show gets really interesting. In less than a minute, the writers are able to capture a depressing part of life that everyone has to deal with. We as people, similar to Squidward, have this desire for pleasure/love or happiness, but this episode argues happiness can't exist on its own. By that I mean, even if Squidward eliminates everything that brings him anger and sadness, that feeling of dread is inevitable, which in my opinion applies to all of us.
Life equals suffering,
It is happiness, if not a direct response to sadness. This episode isn't just stating the fact that Squidward is sad, it's exploring a definition for happiness and satisfaction in general, especially to someone dealing with depression. It criticizes this ideology that bringing yourself satisfaction is surrounding yourself in a setting fit just for you. I think we've all been in that place where we say, if only blank was blank, then everything would be fine. But life is an endless search for that next thing, and this episode is
here it is.
Even with these qualities, Squidward is still sad, so in a sense he's trapped and can never find that full happiness. But that's not on him, it still applies to everyone, us included. Much of this can be supported by looking at the ancient hedonists, very different from modern hedonists, who look at happiness not as a state of being, but as something made up of decisions we make. They find happiness in smaller moments, the way, say, SpongeBob and Patrick do. It's a way of thinking that SpongeBob clearly lives by. Even at something as debatably suffering as work, he finds moments of relief and enjoyment in pretty much every episode. Squidward, who clearly strives for a state of happiness, is only brought down further into his state of depression because he relies on his shortcomings in life around him as the excuse for not being happy. In reality, he's always searching for a constant state of happiness that is unattainable. Let's think hypothetically. Say you hate your job, you have bad allergies, you want a partner, and I don't know, it's too cold where you
live in the Midwest,
so maybe you magically lose your allergies. You find yourself a perfect partner, you move to your dream place, and you get that job as a storyboard artist because, goddamn, that sounds like a pretty good gig. You have literally everything, so do you just never feel sad anymore? Most likely, you're still going to find error in your everyday life. There's going to be something holding you back from being 100% happy. Sitting on the couch watching a movie gave you pleasure because of the events leading up to it, because that activity in itself isn't an act of relief. It only feels like a relief when put in the context of, say, sadness.
Exactly.
This is a good time to cite the Wheel of Fortune. No, not the popular game show hosted by Pat Sajak. I'm talking about a concept in ancient philosophy that means the unpredictable nature of fate. In this scenario, it's safe to assume happiness is attached to this wheel. Boethius, a philosopher from the 6th century, argues that the wheel continues to spin, and that while we may feel the fortune of happiness, it isn't true happiness, because if happiness is attached to the wheel, our sadness is as well. True happiness is found in eternal ideas, like finding God, attaching ourselves to higher knowledge. That's different than the feeling of being happy that you can get from being with a loved one, or say, indulging in pleasures you'd find in Squidville. So not much later in this episode, Squidward accepts this depression, finding himself alone in the park. He is then given another opportunity when a reef blower is found unattended. After some hesitation, Squidward takes the reef blower and begins to play with it, using it against others. He causes disruption and annoys those around him, all for his own pleasure. How this ties into earlier is that this society is essentially a mirror of who he is. This is the show's way of showing Squidward battling against himself. The pleasure and genuine fresh happiness that he feels in the moment is nothing but a reaction to his own actions. It's a feeling that only exists because of the bad. Now notice how I said feeling rather than a way of being. Squidward is aware of the harsh consequences that come from these actions, like being kicked out of the town, but in one of the few times in this entire series, Squidward thinks short-term on what makes him happy. Rather than striving to reach a state of constant happiness, he appreciates the happy moments that he can get. But is this really a happy ending? I'd argue it's not. I can imagine it being impossible for Squidward to find joy and excitement out of most things after this. I mean, how would it feel to know anything good in your life that brings you happiness will eventually feel numb and bring you sadness?
Yeah.
How depressing is it to feel unenthused about the only things that brought you joy, and the only way to find happiness is to disrupt things? And the funny thing is, it's not like Squid is alone. This is all of us. We're all Squidward.
We're all Squidward.
Put into this hypothetical situation. Squidville is one of my favorite episodes of TV out there. It's impressive how much it does in only 12 minutes. Especially with the way the world currently is, I think it's moments like these that remind you of some of the simpler ways of finding happiness in life. Like, say, watching a YouTube video on Squidville or playing with a reef blower. So I'll end with this. Just remember that SpongeBob is a great show. Achieving a constant state of happiness and fulfillment is unachievable. And what was the last thing? Oh yeah, this video is sponsored by Squarespace.
Squarespace. Nice, dude. Great video. Great way to cover it. Great way to frame the conversation so we're all talking about the same thing. So, remember, this is a very philosophical take on the episode, right? I think it's safe to say that is so close. It's just like, that's what it's about. You know what I mean? Like, SpongeBob isn't a show that's highlighting Squidward because Squidward's experience is really happening to him in the context of the show. Perfection doesn't really exist. If you had everything you ever wanted, you would still find ways to be unhappy. So you need to do a thing to make you happy, right? That's not doing a thing. It's a practice that you're doing. Finding enjoyment in something takes work. We can't buy you happiness. You know what I'm saying? And they talk about, you hear all the time, people say, oh, that Daniel Tosh joke, if money doesn't buy happiness. Have you ever seen anybody, what's it called? Man, so many people stole that joke too.
Don't you love that one? Money doesn't buy happiness. Do you live in America? Because it buys a wave runner.
Wave runner.
You ever seen a sad person on a wave runner? Have you? Seriously, have you?
Seriously, have you?
Seriously, have you?
Seriously, have you? Like,
try to frown on a wave runner.
So this joke happened, right? And so the idea that things could make you happy was popularized actually because of this joke, which is, capitalism and all that is over here, right? But there was a recent clip I saw where this girl actually leaves her boyfriend to get onto a wave runner. I don't know if you guys have seen the clip, but that is immediately what came to so many people's mind. They're like, finally, we've done it. We finally have found the one person sad on a wave runner. We've finally seen how you can be sad on a wave runner. Obviously he's not actually on the wave runner. This guy's having a great time still on the wave runner, so it doesn't really fit exactly. But the point being, right, it's a terrible situation. And obviously we can see how this situation where being on a boat, being on vacation, can actually lead you to sadness. You know what I mean? And sorry, back to the relation to the video. I know that's like a long aside, but we can do that here. We have some time. If you guys are done, the video's over, so you can leave. Back to the rest of the video, this whole idea of these cycles and things that you really like becoming dull reminds me immediately then of Discord, You know, I get on Discord chat and I see a lot of people that are searching for this new thing that's going to bring them joy, and they're really happy and excited and fun to be around when they first get on the server. And then after time, they get bored, they get lonely, they get whatever, and these things set in, and they blame Discord. They blame the thing that they're using and not with how they're interacting with that thing. And the people that have lasted so long on the server have a way better relation to us, Saddest, you know, than they do. Mostly because they're younger users normally. You know, 18, 19-year-old crowds have a really hard time with that. You know, they're moved into a new spot. They want to get on Discord and hang out with their friends, and we're not having lit time every day, right? That's really hard for people to deal with. And I think that that's part of it. That flow of your day. Everybody has a really fun time, but you know, just like how people use Discord and get bored on the different servers they're in, it doesn't bring you happiness. That's not the thing, you know what I mean? And when I was younger, what it reminded me of was retirement homes, because I knew that they had schedules for retirement homes. And I noticed how old people are very happy with routines, and I was not. And my biggest relation to that was how it was relatable to a younger crowd, is that as we get older, we'll be more used to and happier with routines. But when we're younger, we reject those ideas as boring and painful, actually, having routines. So that's my list of thoughts with it. Let me know what you think. I know it's quite a bit to deal with, quite heavy, but that's how I feel about it. So I'll see you guys in the next one. Let me know what you think. I'm going to be all up in the comments in these sections of these SpongeBob videos. They're very, very fun. And I'll holler at y'all. Peace.